It's time we had a talk about why we abandoned the F12 project. This project is absolutely insane. It is such a monumental build. No one's ever built a car like this before to do what we wanted to do the Gymkhana videos like Ken Block did with a Unicorn, but in an exotic car with a V12 twin turbo sequential transmission, just an absolute beast of a car. So let's start with the first issue. That is the V12 engine that was in this car. Now, it was turbocharged, and it was a lot of compromises that were being made to put turbos on the normally aspirated V12 engine. That was just not ever supposed to happen. The compression was too high, the fuel system didn't have enough capacity, and there was engine damage. If it would have run for much longer, the way it was, it definitely would have blown up, which it would have set us back a ton. So the next big issue that we had with this build was getting a steel roll cage into an aluminum chassis and doing it the right way to where we can run this car in different events and get it basically legal for a bunch of different racing series, hill climbs, whatever we want to do to it. And also, we had to get this car with the race seats and everything in it to fit Damon, who's much taller than I am. So just doing the basic fab work on the roll cage took way longer than we were expecting, and it really dragged out, and it's still not done. So you might be wondering, what are we going to do with the F12? So, Tim, no.
What?
No, take those parts out. We're not,
Oh,
guys, we're not,
they're in the trash.
We're not gonna stop the F12 project. It's just on a hold for now. Let's get that, those are Ferrari parts, Tim.
Yeah.
I think we should head over to the machine shop and check in on the engine and see where we're at with that, because obviously that's a huge undertaking. There's not enough noise. Hey, make some noise. Let's look back a bit at this whole process. So in the beginning, right, we started this F12 project not very long after I had first started working with DD in-house full-time. We had to obviously get the shop all set up, get the plasma table, get all the equipment in place, organize everything, because just working out of a different shop just takes time to get comfortable. Everything is slower, and filming, the whole process of filming takes a long time. It takes so much longer than just doing it. That was one issue. And then we kind of got in the rhythm of things, right? We started building the roll cage. We started doing the chassis mods, getting the seats mounted in the right place, engines out, engines disassembled. We're over at CP Carrillo. They're checking out the parts. They're making new parts for us. Things are starting to come along. All these big steps. And then, well, then we moved. And this wasn't just a normal move, right? We moved from like 7,000 square feet into a 30,000 square foot building that is where we're at now, right? The old Hoonigan building. So that put a huge damper on the F12 project. We had to kind of stop what we were doing, put all the money that the guys had, and move it over to get this building. And during all this time, we've got other projects too. Two 599s now that underwent like a huge transformation. I know visually it wasn't big, but the amount of work that went into them was quite a lot. The Murcielago, which you guys have seen, like that's still a build in progress. We're gonna get those parts back very soon, and we're gonna continue on that. That'll be done, wrapped up, and that's gonna look sick. So I know you guys are gonna look forward to seeing that, because it's gonna look really wild. And during all of this, at the same time, right, Damon bought a Senna, a $1.5 million car. That's crazy. So now we've got that car, but it comes with a huge price tag. And then the other McLaren, the 720 GTR, that was crashed, that was totaled. We rebuilt all the suspension. We tried to put the body kit on. Obviously, you guys know that, well, that didn't work out. We had to send it to Creative Bespoke, and they spent months building that car and getting everything to line up. Now that car is back. So we have so many cars in the shop that need constant attention. It just takes a lot of time. And where we're at with the F12 build right now is, well, we're about 3/4 of the way done. There's still a lot of money that needs to be spent on the car. At least $150,000 left, at least. That's just a rough calculation. Let's go get a look at this thing and see how much longer this is gonna take and how much more money we're gonna need to spend on the engine itself. So we're back at D Sport and we're looking at the parts here. And this is the head, and this has some issues still. We went from the DFI ports to a port injection style, which means instead of having the injectors inside of the head and spraying the fuel directly into the chamber, we blocked all those off and went back to the old school, old style port injection. It's just easier for us to build that car that way. We plugged them up, but unfortunately, when they got welded, there was still some contaminants in the head. We've got a bunch of porousness inside of those welds. So now these are gonna go back to the welder. They're gonna have to get ground down, cleaned, and then re-welded, and then re-machined. Just a bunch of extra time. We also had an issue with our new rods. So Carrillo made us new rods. They also made us new pistons. But during the process, we brought them an original rod, an original piston, and they took those, and the rod went, Carrillo made us new rods. They also made us new pistons. But during the process, we brought them an original rod, an original piston, and they took those, and the rod went to the Carrillo side. The piston went to the CP side. So they spec'd out the pistons, they spec'd out the rods. The rods were all done, the specs were taken, and then we went back and we made some changes to the piston. So we did an offset on the pin. So we actually moved the pin slightly up because of the way the crankshaft spins. You could probably explain that better.
Let's just say that you got a clockwise rotation of your crankshaft like this. If you can get this rod and the pin offset a little bit, then you're sure that you're not kind of trying to push down while you don't have a nice angle on the crankshaft.
So it'll almost twist the piston as it's pushing it up, right? So it'll kind of bind it up in there.
It does, yeah.
So by offsetting it, you get it to want to go straight.
You'll reduce the amount of rock that you get on the piston. Here's ours. If, to exaggerate this, if you didn't have it offset, what would be happening is with the crankshaft right under here, our rod angle might be to the opposite way that we want it.
Yeah, as the crank is pushing up, it's pushing the piston this way, right? So it's kind of forcing it to the side.
Yeah, so when the pressure comes down and this starts to come down, it's almost resisting the rotation that the crankshaft wants to go. By offsetting it and moving this, so that you've got a better angle like this, now as it comes down, it's pushing the crankshaft in the right direction.
Yeah.
You get two benefits. We get a number of benefits. Number one, you get reduced piston rock. So from a noise aspect, the engine's quieter. And depending on how much boost you're running, that's your piston to wall clearance. And the more boost, the more horsepower, generally have to make it a little bit looser.
Yep.
So by offsetting that pin, you help quiet it down.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you get a mechanical advantage on it by having the rod at a nice angle. When the power stroke and all this combustion pressure comes to force this down, it's just helping it along.
So instead of it being, really close to top dead center where everything is straight, it's trying to push this thing straight down. That's not good, that's not what you want. You want some angle in it so it can help it along and kind of guide it into rotation. And doing so with the piston offset, that's gonna help it. It's gonna be a little less wear on the bearings, which are gonna take a lot of abuse because taking a lot of power.
They, it's very common in motorcycle engines. A lot of engines, they might be, offset a full millimeter. I mean, it's a major amount. You probably offset this maybe, at most maybe a quarter of a millimeter.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how much they do there. And a lot of the newer engines from the manufacturers are doing that. And the other thing that you get from it, you actually get two things. You get a longer intake stroke. There's actually more degrees while the engine is doing intake. And you get more degrees while the engine is doing
basically the power cycle, right?
Yeah. So you get a little bit shorter on the exhaust, you get a little bit shorter on the compression.
Which are the two that are basically taking away the power, right?
Correct.
That's just robbing power from the engine. So you're getting longer power cycles.
Right.
And you're basically wasting less of this engine's efficiency to get the exhaust out.
Exactly. So in addition to doing it that way with the piston offset, in say like a cast iron block, we'll actually take the cylinder bore and we will move it over so that it accomplishes the same thing.
Oh, okay.
So we'll actually bore it a little bit, we'll bore it 10,000, 10,000ths of an inch this way.
So that you'll basically put the block in the machine, find center, and then offset it slightly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
and that's typically what
lots of tricks.
Yeah, lots of tricks out there.
In all of this engineering and all of these little details that we were changing, something got missed, and it was a big problem. So we were designing the piston. The rods were already done. We're like, okay, offset this, but also instead of a 20 millimeter pin, go to a 22 millimeter pin to get some more strength, basically make this pin stronger. Well, the problem was that the piston guys had all this information. They made the pistons to our specs. That one bit of information just did not get transferred over to the guys that were making the rods. So we ended up with a rod that had a 20 millimeter hole and a piston with a 22 millimeter hole. That didn't work. So we didn't notice this until not very long ago. So They rushed the order for us. They got the pistons made. They got the rods made. We went and we picked them up. And then with our moving to Compton, we had all these parts. We had everything. It was just in boxes. We pushed the car into the corner and we kind of left it there for about 2 months. We didn't really touch it. Then we pulled all the stuff out. We pulled the engine out. We brought it back over here to the guys at D-Sport because we had them already do a lot of machine work on the engine. And we came back over here. We picked it up. We put the engine together as a mock-up block. So we put it in the car. We built the bell housing, the mounts, the exhaust, the intercooler, all that stuff. Took it all out. Brought it all back over here. Got all the parts. And Michael's got a good eye. So we pull all these parts out, and he's like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. He grabbed the pin, and the pin did not fit in the rod. So we took him back over to Carrillo. They apologized for it, obviously, and we didn't catch it early on, but they rushed it, and they were able to save the rod. So they didn't have to make new rods, and at the same time, we kind of got an upgrade. So normally, you have this is like a...
It's a bronze, yeah.
Bronze,
it's bronze
bushing,
bushing,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so this acts kind of like a bearing. It's very thin. You can see like just a little bit. It's a very thin sleeve that they press in here and then machine to the exact right tolerance. But the other way they could do it is machine it and leave it just steel. So they did that, but to do that, you need a special coating on the pin, DLC coating, right?
Diamond-like coating, yeah. It's hard as a diamond, and it has to be applied in a very specific fashion. I think it's like a chemical vapor deposition. You know, it's this vapor comes down and then goes on the surface, and it makes it just, you know, a really cool thing. You have to be really careful though, because, you know, some aftermarket companies do it and it doesn't stick. And if that delaminates,
flakes off,
you've got, you know, diamonds going through your engine, slicing up your bearings.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know, diamonds are like probably the best cutting material in the world.
Yes.
So you have that going through the bearings and the sides of the pistons and skirts, and it's wrecking the engine.
So we only use, like, we'll use, you know, the ones from the top piston manufacturers and stuff like that. You know, CP, no problem. This isn't going to have a delamination issue. And if we ever use anything else with DLC, we always try to find an OEM part that is DLC coated. So in some cases, like we might be working on a Mitsubishi engine, and the buckets in that are, you know, on the Mitsubishi side, well, they're just normal, no coating.
Yeah.
But, you know, Hyundai might use that same part and put a DLC coating on it.
Yeah.
So you can actually get that DLC coated Hyundai part and stick it in your Mitsubishi.
Make them fit into that.
There's a few little tricks like that, and we're always on the lookout for that kind of stuff.
And that's just to save from having to do this process, because like you said, it's so complex. So these parts are a lot more expensive.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so because there was that mistaken communication, to fix these rods, they actually upgraded them quite a bit. So now it's lighter on top. We've got the DLC coated pins, which is like something they use in NASCAR. Obviously, those engines are run hard for a long time, and they've tested them. So we know it's going to work well. It's an upgrade in the end. So a step in the right direction, but obviously more time, right? And that's been kind of the whole thing with this build. It's always something, it's never been done before. No one has ever built a car like this and really gone through every single step and really thought out everything, like the pin offset, the size of the rings, the gas porting, the coatings. Then that's why we brought it to D-Sport, because these guys are experts at building race engines, high performance race engines that last a long time too. So much engineering going on in this build. One little thing like that can completely stop it. Now everything is going to take a month longer just to wait for all these things to get built. We're on to the next issue. Ferrari only makes 3 bearing sizes for this engine. It's back in your hands, and you've got to figure out what bearing clearance we want.
Yes, it's not the ideal way. Most other engines, you either have, you know, about 5 or 6 graded bearings that you can just run to your local dealership and pick up, or some, you know, maybe 2 or 3 aftermarket bearings for it. But since it's Ferrari, we don't know if, you know, when we spec it out, hey, we try to order this one, well, that's on back order for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever.
Or indefinitely.
Or indefinitely. It's
Ferrari.
no longer made. You know?
Yeah.
So that's the scary part. We have done some things in the past where we've resized things to use a more popular bearing. We've fixed Mitsubishi engines using a Honda bearing. You know, we've done stuff like that. I hope we don't have to go there.
Yeah.
But we've got
there are ways around it, right?
Yeah.
But that takes more time. it's more money, because it's a lot of time spent on what can we do, and then researching that and finding what's going to work. You never know. We could find a bearing from Ferrari that is an off-the-shelf bearing that is actually going to work well, but they're not in stock at the dealerships in the US. It's going to come from the factory in Italy. And then how many do they make? How often are they on the shelf? Or do they make them custom to order? So these are all variables that we do not know yet. And I hope that we can figure this out, and I hope it goes smooth. But if we do have to get a custom bearing made, or we do have to start machining, like now we're going to take these brand new rods and start machining the rods and maybe machining the crank down and doing all these things that in hindsight, if we would have known we couldn't get the bearings, maybe we would have had Carrillo make us a different size rod to begin with.
We can resize it, you know, so that is always our option. We can go through, obviously it seems, you know, really simple that, oh, if I need to make it bigger, I just hone it out and make it bigger. Yeah, that's the simple part. If we need to make it smaller, that's a little bit more complicated because we'll actually take the rod apart and we'll have to mill both sides of it.
Yeah, so they'll cut the two flat sides slightly, put it back together, which makes it ovaled, and then bore it out. That can be done, but you do lose some strength, right? If you, depending on how much you do.
It's not too bad. I mean, we normally never have to take that much out where strength would be an issue.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's time.
It's time. Every single rod needs to be put in the machine and centered and bored. And
exactly. The other thing that I was going to mention to you, you know, originally when we had the original rod design come from Carrillo, my plan was, you know, they were going to supply us with just your typical piston pin like this, which is just a really nice polished finish on it. And my plan was to have that WPC treated. And what WPC is, it's a micro shot peening process where they have these really tiny balls that they blast at this with the media, and it gives it a surface that's micro hardened, so it's nice and hard, and it also has some little dimples in there to hold the oil and stuff.
So it's almost like a micro, like, golf ball surface.
Exactly. And that was the plan, was originally to use that. Now what we'll do is we'll actually still be able to benefit from that, but instead of doing the pin, we're actually going to be doing the small end of the rod.
Okay.
So we will treat the small end of the rod, and then our interface will be basically WPC against DLC,
which is like the best possible combination. It's so slippery.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that. I mean, that's really the best interface material to material that you can have. It'll be the lowest friction, lowest amount of wear. Sometimes these curveballs that get thrown at us sometimes can make some lemonade out of the lemons.
Yeah, and in the end, this thing's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
But throughout our journey of building this car, there's been some setbacks, some hiccups, and you know, we haven't built anything like this before, and I don't think anyone else really has either. They haven't built a purpose-built Ferrari for Gymkhana. There's just so many things that really complicate this whole build, and everything has just taken a little longer and cost a little more than what you'd expect going into it. But when you're doing the unknown, that's just, you know, that's part of the game. Now we've got a lot more work to do, obviously, in the shop, on the car, but also you guys have a lot of work here.
Yes.
All the sleeves have to be put back in and machined now to match the new pistons because they don't fit, right? The pistons are bigger. These need to be clearanced to accept the piston and have the proper piston to cylinder wall gap, which that's another, I mean, we could go on forever about all the little details on this thing, but I don't want to bore you guys too much with the details, but that's kind of where we're at here. So I think we easily have 3 to 4 weeks left of stuff that you guys need to do, and that's not including getting the bearings or anything else that sets us back. It's not a quick process. It just takes a lot of time. All right, so that was the update for the F12 engine. Now, obviously there's a lot of other things that still have to be built for the chassis. The suspension needs to be figured out, which doesn't just mean the shocks. All the control arms, the brakes, the steering angle. We have a ton of work left. So we're not gonna get rid of the car. We're not stopping. We're just delayed a bit. Hopefully, when everything goes well with the engine, which I'm crossing my fingers that it does, we don't have any issues with the bearings, sourcing any other parts we might need, and we get the engine back, we can put that back in the car, and hopefully it's only gonna be maybe a few weeks of work to finish it up to actually get that thing running, which is gonna be amazing. That's a huge milestone. Now, when it's running, that doesn't mean that, boom, it's out, it's running, we're gonna take it out of the track. It means that it's running, and now we need to figure out all the other stuff. There's just so many things that need to be buttoned up on the car. Like I said, it's a massive project. We're gonna jump back in the Bentley, which I didn't mention that we were driving the Bentley. We just jumped in, but last night, we obviously finished Dave's car off, but then had the issue with the rear suspension. Well, you can see it's better now, it's fixed. So we had the issue with the airbags. A lot of you guys have actually left comments and said, there's a lift mode, which I didn't know about, but now we know when we put it up, we're gonna use that lift mode. But I haven't used the nitrous yet. So why don't we all jump in And feel this nitrous, because I'm pretty excited about this, and I can't wait to get Dave's reaction when he jumps in the car. It's gonna be really cool.
Steve, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
He hit his arm on the bracket.
Yeah, careful. There's a baby nitrous bottle back there. Sport mode. Arm the nitrous. Do a little purge. All right, boys. You ready?
Ready.
It's a good thing this thing has good brakes.
Yeah.
It gets up to the speed limit really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the speed limit.
It was pretty good.
Now try it without nitrous. See if there's a noticeable difference.
That's boring.
It's quick.
It's quick, but
it's no.
It's not nitrous.
Not nitrous. Dude, how many bottles of nitrous do you think Dave's gonna go through? In a day.
In a
day.
Yeah. At least 3.
We're running on fumes here. It's on empty.
good old 87, huh?
Gotta, keep Dave's Bentley running in tip-top shape. Nitrous and 87 octane. It's the way you keep that motor running strong.
So what did the time say?
From 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., there's an additional 10 cents off per gallon. The nice hours of Compton.
Risk your life, get cheap gas.
Bring the McLaren.
All right, we're fueled up. We're head back to the shop. Not just look at the F12 again, but all of the other stuff that we have going on at the DDE HQ.
He's torquing his wheel right now.
That's the specs, right?
Yeah, that's
there.
like 90 foot
Right
pounds.
there.
Oh, he's going more! Oh my gosh!
That is not 90 foot pounds. Dude, he is
That's
torquing
a solid
this thing.
180 right there.
Now he's gonna drive 90 miles an hour with that 55 mile an hour rated tire.
Dude,
That's
he
sick.
was cranking that thing.
You on a donut.
Oh, you almost hit the Bentley, Steven.
No, I didn't almost hit the Bentley.
All right, buddy. He was out in front of the shop when we left. Yo. Obviously, the F12 is sitting over here, but we talked about that car enough. So let's go over to the other room where the other cars are at and talk about some of the other problems that we're having currently. The 720 GTR is back, which is absolutely insane looking. But when they went to pick up the car and they started it up, it was smoking like crazy. We haven't put the car up on the lift yet because we've got so many things going on, but that needs to be addressed. Also, in the rear, currently, the tire is rubbing, like, that's the body right there. That I can't even get my finger in there. We're gonna have to do some trimming. All of this is gonna have to get cut out on the inside, and we gotta be really careful not to damage the paint, so that's really time consuming. The car's a bit too low. We're gonna raise it up slightly. Not much, probably about 20 millimeters. Supercars that are completely slammed don't actually work well. Like any car, if you slam it to the ground, it's not gonna handle well. It looks cool sitting still, but we drive these cars. Damon drives the wheels off of these cars, which that's how they're meant to be driven. And they do break, and we do have issues. Then that's repairs. We're not trying to break the cars, except for Dave when he crashes the van into the fence. You know, that's just, that's just Dave.
Yeah, that's a little different, yeah.
So, you know, that happened. Now we have a new van. That was obviously an expense that wasn't exactly planned out. That is what it is. Over here, we obviously have the SVJ that spent a lot of time in Europe and had transmission issues. It went to the dealership, I believe in London. They replaced a bunch of parts on the transmission. I think it was a $10,000 or $15,000 bill from them to repair all those parts. We got the car back and it has the same exact issue. That, it really looks like it's transmission. So we ordered a transmission. The transmission got lost shipping somewhere, we don't know. Dealing with all of that, but now we have that car that's over $500,000 just sitting in the corner, not even really drivable. And then the Huracan. So this is another project that is in the works, right? We've got the e-brake in there, we've got the sequential shift lever, but we still need to scan the entire thing and build a center console for it, make it look nice. But then that's just looks. Functionality-wise, the car really needs to get a clutch pedal, and that's part of the electronic control units that we bought from HTG. That has to get wired in. That's gonna be a big process. I've never done anything like that before. It's gonna take some time, and it's also a big risk because if it doesn't work and it sends a wrong signal to the transmission, it could break the transmission. I think a lot of that is in the tuning. HTG is gonna help us out with that, so I hope we don't have any issues there, but there's just so many different variables. We got all this stuff going on. I did, however, get a part for this car that just came in, so let me go grab that. We have these two control units. These are completely programmable, like an aftermarket ECU, but they're designed to control the DCT transmission. So most cars only need one. To make it work in this car, apparently we need two. They're not incredibly complicated to wire up, but I mean, there are quite a bit of wires that go into each of these units. So we've got to wire two of these units up to a clutch pedal, to the factory control unit, and also wire it into the transmission. So this transmission control unit sits inside of the gearbox. So we have to take the cover off the gearbox, drain the fluid, and pull this unit out and modify it. So instead of taking this car apart and this car being down, we bought a new one. This is used, it was still a couple $1,000s, but now we're gonna be able to modify this unit here, which is kind of complex. One wrong thing will destroy this transmission. So we wanna take our time and do it right and make sure we get it right. Because if we rush through this, we'll make a video and then the car is gonna be broken. That's just another expense and headache that we don't need to have. So a lot of these things, because we're doing all this stuff for the first time ever, really, there is no information on it. Everything takes a lot of time. So all this stuff that we have to do in the near future, get all these things in the car and working properly. But right now we have an issue with this car. I wasn't here, but Damon said the last time that he drove it, he was grabbing the e-brake and he could feel the front brakes locking up. That's something really weird that's going on. I can't really understand what's happening to make that happen. So I'm gonna grab the keys to this thing, I'm gonna fire it up, I'm gonna pull it outside and try to recreate what happened. Either way, we gotta get to the bottom of this issue and sort it out because Damon's gonna be back soon and I know he's gonna wanna drive this car. There's definitely something going on. It's almost cutting power and applying the brakes in the front. The only time I've had that happen before is not in a drift car, but a factory car when you're sliding it around and it thinks something is wrong. It thinks you're like on ice and you've lost control and the stability control is trying to kick in and actually applying the brakes for you, trying to save the car from a spin. I don't know why it's doing that. That's another issue. Like the factory electronics are fighting us when we want to do these kinds of things. They just were not made to do this. I'm not sure what to do here, but I think the next step, we'll probably pull this car in the shop. I'll get Steven on it. He'll get the odd tail out and clear the codes. And maybe it's something that if it sees a certain amount of front to rear wheel speed differences or lockups in the rear, maybe it stores those values and it goes into this kind of limp mode that it's doing right now. I'm not sure, but that's part of the game. We're doing stuff that nobody else is doing and trying to make it work with these crazy exotic supercars. At least I have some sort of direction on this car, so I'm gonna pull it in the shop. Well, this is just another car that needs work immediately, along with all the other cars that are over here on this side of the shop. But you know what? That's just the name of the game. I do wanna say a big thank you to you guys watching, right? Because this video has been kind of a downer, but it's the reality of what's going on. The F12 project will be amazing when it's done, and I know a lot of you guys have wondered, what's going on in the shop? Well, what's going on with the F12, really? So it's just slowly moving forward at this point. We're gonna get onto it a lot more now. Obviously, we have all these other cars that are gonna, it's the whole progression of every other build that we're doing. But I really do think that in the next few months, we're gonna make some huge, huge progress with the F12. And I hope in those few months, we will actually have the car running, going to the dyno, starting to shoot some flames, start driving the car back here at the block. But either way, we are moving forward with the car. Don't worry guys, it's still happening. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for all the craziness that is DDE.